The CCP seeks to subvert the American government, the legal system, colleges and universities, and the media, which we'll go into in detail today, to target Falun Gong, a peaceful spiritual practice banned in China. And it also targets Shen Yun Performing Arts. So what is Shen Yun, and why is the CCP targeting it? Shen Yun is a New York-based premier dance company that tours the world, and it was started by Falun Gong practitioners who strive to embody the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance. These are the core values of the practice. Shen Yun's tagline is China before communism. Its mission is to revive and celebrate traditional Chinese culture, and it also has scenes depicting the CCP's gruesome practice of forcibly removing the organs of illegally imprisoned Falun Gong practitioners. And since the start of the persecution, the Chinese regime has used its entire state-run media apparatus to smear Falun Gong. The goal was to try to turn the Chinese people against the ancient practice. And through those same propaganda channels, it has aimed to silence Shen Yun. Now, the narratives that essentially carry a similar meaning are seen in the American news company, the New York Times. So, how did we get here? The CCP has persecuted Falun Gong since 1999, but according to whistleblower Yuan Hongbing, Chinese legal scholar with sources in China, in October 2022, Chinese regime leader Xi Jinping held a secret meeting. In it, he called for a new strategy specifically focusing on using Western media outlets to spread disinformation to go after Falun Gong-run companies. About 1 year later, in October 2023, the New York Times says it began its so-called investigative reporting on Shen Yun. Fast forward 10 months to August to December 2024, the New York Times published 8 hit pieces smearing Shen Yun based virtually entirely on anecdotes of a few disgruntled former employees. And there's another layer to this story. One of the New York Times reporters involved is Nicole Hong. Her father, George Hong, is a professor at a New York university. An organization that has knowledge of overseas Chinese did a profile on him. It says he was an honorary director of the Western Returned Scholars Association. That organization is part of the CCP's United Front Work Department, which does foreign influence operations. The page on George was taken down after the New York Times published its articles. He denies any connection to the organization or to his daughter's reporting. This is a troubling timeline. She gives the directive and to use Western media to launch disinformation campaigns. And afterwards, the New York Times starts its reporting and then publishes hit pieces on Shen Yun, a company that's been performing for nearly 20 years. The timing raises serious questions. Now, why do I say they're hit pieces? The CCP, specifically through their regime-controlled mouthpieces like China Daily, People's Daily, and Global Times, seeks to have people believe Falun Gong practitioners only practice because of coercion. And similarly, the New York Times cherry-picked sources imply that the artists and others work at the company because they're manipulated into doing so. But Shen Yun and the many artists we've interviewed say they have faith and work with Shen Yun to carry out their mission with the same bravery some had when fleeing persecution in China, bravery now used to inspire others and bring about the best in humanity. Thus, they have free thought. And Shen Yun performers do use modern Western medicine. However, the New York Times, through their sources, claims that Shen Yun does not allow dancers to seek modern medical treatment. This is the same propaganda line the CCP-linked media spreads about Falun Gong to smear the practice and justify the persecution. Yet doctors, like Dr. Damon Noto, have said that they regularly do x-rays and MRIs treating sprained ankles and broken bones that Shen Yun dancers face as high-performance athletes. Furthermore, Shen Yun is politically neutral. It's not anti-China because clearly it tells the story of China itself. Falun Gong is not inherently anti-communist. We know that because Falun Gong and the Communist Party coexisted peacefully in China for about 7 years. It was only after the CCP started murdering Falun Gong practitioners that Falun Gong opposed it, which is simply a defensive and moral reaction to the persecution. Not politics, just common sense. The New York Times uses phrases such as, "the shows amplify the anti-communist message of Falun Gong." Remember, not anti-communist, just anti-persecution. The CCP uses a very similar tactic that Falun Gong is anti-China. Anti-communist and anti-China are two different things, but these instances show the CCP and the New York Times use similar rhetoric to claim that Falun Gong and Shen Yun are somehow this oppositional force, when in fact they're simply promoting traditional culture and their core principles. Now, Shen Yun is socially open. It's a transparent group. The company performs right out in public in front of millions of people in 36 countries. What's secretive about that? And anyone can buy or read the main book of Falun Gong online. It's public. So Shen Yun is socially open. However, the CCP has long falsely cast Falun Gong as a closed and secretive group to justify its persecution. The New York Times places its articles on Shen Yun under the category of closed and secretive groups. So here again, the New York Times is presenting a narrative that bears stark similarity to the one the CCP has long promoted. But in reality, they are socially open and transparent. As a whole, we're not alleging the New York Times is in some way coordinating with the CCP, but the striking similarities in the rhetoric and framing, along with the timing, are concerning enough to warrant closer scrutiny. One organization exploring this issue is the Falun Dafa Information Center, which is a nonprofit that helps people learn about Falun Gong and compiles evidence of the persecution. Their extensive counter-investigation points out conflicts of interest, distortions, and falsehoods. Here's what the center says about the New York Times reporting. The end result of these fantastical stories is a narrative designed to incite the U.S. population to turn against Shen Yun and Falun Gong. The New York Times, however, says their main article was thoroughly reported, fact-checked, and edited, and that the outlet stands behind its publication. So we've established that messages similar to what the Chinese Communist regime wants people to believe are surfacing in American mainstream society. So what's the big picture? Congressman Scott Perry says the CCP just takes advantage of the freedom of the media. He says the CCP's suppression campaign against Shen Yun amounts to unrestricted warfare. That's the use of any means to subdue targeted groups. And his statement reflects a broader concern that the Chinese regime seeks to use the American government, the legal system, schools, and the media to further its goals.